Hello to Goes Reviews, use just I review and welcome back to the Road to Christmas. Today we are continuing on this merry little road by taking a look at Home Alone 3 from 20th Century Fox.
$10 million for the microchip, Mr. Beaupre.
We will find it. Their mission is deadly.
Has to be on a plane.
We are going to Chicago. Their technology is state-of-the-art.
There are 26 miners in the 14 houses we haven't checked.
Their strategy is unheard of.
We're gonna work houses in broad daylight?
It's the suburbs. Nobody's home during the day. They've got the perfect plan. That's the house. Tomorrow we hit. He's got the chicken pox.
What?
And he's home alone.
Nobody's gonna do anything about this. I'll just have to do it myself.
I'll go in the front.
Heads up! Ouch. Hi. Surprise.
I'm coming down.
From John Hughes, the writer and producer of Home Alone.
See ya.
This Christmas, staying home will become an adventure. Again. Home Alone 3.
Wait till you see what I do next.
Written by John Hughes. Directed by Raja Gosnell.
Home Alone 3. If we're comparing you to dessert you look about as appealing as a diarrhea sundae. Abysmal critical reception from both audiences and critics. Written and directed by Roger Gosnell, the same director that released the Smurfs movie. Clearly, this is a movie from the people who really didn't care about what they were doing. How do I know this? Well, all you gotta do is look at the film's tagline. It's bad news for bad guys. Again. You see? Even the filmmakers knew how unoriginal their movie was. That's pretty bad. But of course, what makes Home Alone 3 really sound like shit is this completely unrecognizable cast. You can't continue a film franchise with completely different actors, folks. Well, unless you're James Bond. But then again, James Bond's character was the same every time. And hell, there was even cast members from other films that returned. Here, not one cast member returns. Not one. The only thing Home Alone 3 says you should is because it's better than the first two. And yeah, would you like to know who said that review? Ebert. Yeah, Roger Ebert. America's most beloved critic flat out said Home Alone 3 is better than Home Alone 2 and hell, even the original Home Alone. Hell, I'm not gonna argue with that. But that's still a pretty bold statement to make. But maybe Ebert's onto something. Perhaps I've been looking at this all wrong. Maybe Home Alone 3 isn't all that bad. Sure, none of the original cast are here. Sure the film didn't make enough cash back. Sure the writer hasn't made any good, written anything better afterwards. Sure the movie was just a cheap cash grab. Sure Roger Ebert was off his rocker when he said it was good. Sure, oh god, this movie was gonna suck. Well, get out your umbrellas because we're going through one hell of a shitstorm today. So Home Alone 3 is about four government terrorists who are planning on sneaking past this computer microchip that can make unattackable to air missiles. What? I'm sorry, is any of these even Home Alone related? Because I can't even tell what the hell I'm watching anymore. Yeah, apparently this film does not start off at all like a Home Alone movie. It starts off more like a spy thriller or something. And I wouldn't know because I haven't seen a lot, but still. Well, what happens is they sneak the chip in a toy car so they can get it past airport security, which is stupid because every technology device has a microchip in it. Regardless, but they put it in a bag, which gets confused for a woman's luggage, and she ends up taking the toy car home, and she ends up giving it to her neighbor, Alex Pruitt, played by Alex D. Wills. you're probably wondering, well, why isn't Culkin returning? Well, he would have been an adult by the time this film came out, and a Home Alone movie starring an adult Macaulay Culkin, not exactly family entertainment. Well, anyway, they get to there, and the bad guys, Burton Jernigan, Earl Unger, Alice, and Bill Prey, plan on searching every house in the neighborhood until they find one with the car. Eventually, eventually they get to Alex's house, and he sets up the traps to ward him off. And the reason Alex is home alone this time is that he has the chicken pox, so he has to stay at home while his parents go on business and his older siblings go to school. So, you're probably wondering, what does this film have to do with the other two movies, besides having a similar title and similar concept? Well, the film was written by John Hughes, the writer of the first two films, and considering everything the guy wrote after Home Alone 2 I wouldn't have worth enough to wipe my ass with, I figure this film is going to flop. And for the most part, I was kind of right. This movie is not perfect. But before we get into the negatives, since ours is a ton, let's go over what did work. Mainly, the first thing is, the casting is okay. One of the standouts being Alice T. Wills. I'll agree with what Roger Ebert said. He's very charming, and much like Macaulay Culkin, he managed to pull off half the stuff when he was solo. The movie's also got a great score. Now, sadly, John Williams did not come back to score this time, but the music this time was pretty good. My favorite addition was the theme for the villains. Then you have the fine moment of any Home Alone film, the booby traps. And here it's more hit and miss this time, and I will say that sometimes the traps can miss their mark, but sometimes it's pretty funny. Although it is kind of ruined when they have to add those cartoonish sound effects. Again, a lot of people will degrade Home Alone 3 for being unrealistic, but I have to ask, was Home Alone ever realistic? You gotta throw suspension of disbelief with these movies if you're going to enjoy them. There is no way in hell that an 8-year-old kid in real life can ward off several armed adults with booby traps. A lot of people degrade Home Alone 3 for being unrealistic when the other two movies were not as realistic at all. But yeah, let's get into what didn't work. Now, some of the casting isn't that perfect. Now, of course, we got Molly, Alex's older brother, played by Scarlett Johansson. Then there's the older brothers. Then there's Alex's older brother, Stan, who was pretty much supposed to be this film's version of Buzz. But he didn't have the douchebaggery of Buzz, and then there's Karen Pruitt did not have the concernity of Kevin's mother, Mrs. McAllister. Another thing that doesn't work is the villains are pretty bland compared to Harry and Marv. Now Harry and Marv are great villains. They work off each other all the time. They get some great lines, and when it comes down to it, they're idiots. There's just a couple of bottom-of-the-barrel crooks, and they give the idea that a kid can ward off two grown men with booby traps somewhat believable. Here, the villains are four mercenaries, and there's 4 of them. At the beginning of the film, they're shown to be calculus, cool, and well organized, so when you suddenly see them getting their asses handed to them by an 8-year-old, it's pretty damn embarrassing. But that said, with all that said, my final verdict, Home Alone 3, not a perfect movie. It does have some redeeming qualities, somewhat, but besides that, I couldn't think of anything good about this film. But if you want to watch Home Alone movies, there are simply worse ones to watch. So just the next two, which I unfortunately have to look at. My final verdict, I give Home Alone 6.5 toy cars out of 10. Join me next time where I gotta look at Home Alone 4, Taking Back the House.